aristocrat, pulling rabbits from his hat. Oh, well, I didn't know it worked like that. Sounds great until you do the math. And now people waking up, poking heads out of their stuff. What an expensive turtle shell. It's probably just as well because I don't want to be the machine powered by the American dream. Now the people want the truth, but the truth it can't be found. Well, it's just an artifact, and it's buried in the ground. And I know I'm to blame. Let's call it by its true name. Well, I never held a gun, but I gave it to your son, and I watched as it lulled him to sleep with the hypnotic hum of the machine.
Well, welcome to another Best You discussion. That was the lovely and talented and our friend Amy Hendrickson. Five things we ask you. Like our Facebook page. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit our website at BestYouGuru.com. Sign up to receive our blogs. Send us an email, let us know at BestYouGuru@yahoo.com. And send donations via Venmo or PayPal. Venmo at Robin-Shivery or PayPal at BestYouGuru@yahoo.com. Our topic today is critical race theory. Now some may say, Harry, what does that have to do with the authentic identity theory? It has everything to do with it. Critical race theory and those who oppose it right now in our current political climate is necessary for one reason. But first, let me ask you, do you even know what critical race theory is? You know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. The authentic identity theory, which we founded, developed, and we support, requires that each of us look at our lives and evaluate. You know, there's much wrong with this world, but there's always something wrong with the world because there's always something to improve, just like us. Are you the same person you were as a child, only better? Or have you changed? Have you changed the very core essence of you? The only way you'll know that is to look back at you as a child. Are you the new and improved person? Or did you veer away and become what society expected you to be? You know, in our country, our Constitution was written for one particular purpose, one goal that we should all have in common. That's to form a more perfect union. That's it. In order to do that, we must look back each day, each month, each year. We must look back all the way to the beginning and figure out how do we get better. It's that simple. That's the only way to form a more perfect union, is to improve on where we came from. The United States, America, where I live, is an experiment in democracy. Now I know somebody will say, but Harry, we're not a democracy. I understand that. We are a democratic republic. Okay, so for those that really want to get technical, We are a democratic republic. I understand. But it's based upon democracy principles. In order to form a more perfect union, we must think, plan, do, review, and repeat. That's the process. That's a process in business. That's a process in life. Think about what you're going to do. Plan what you're going to do it, then review it. Is it really what you wanted? Do the expectations that when you were thinking meet what actually delivered? Then you improve it and you repeat. But you got to think, you got to plan, you got to do it, and you got to review. Such as our country. Have our actions created a more perfect union? We need to look at that. Do and repeat. Do and repeat is not the American way. This does not form a more perfect union. We must review, analyze, critique what we have done. We must review it. Otherwise, we'll repeat it. Think, plan, do, review, and repeat. Think about what we do. The improvement path requires us to review our past. If we're going to form a more perfect union, we must look at our past. We must. Looking at history is critical to improvement, whether as a nation or as a person. We must review our actions. Did they produce the results we desired? Ignoring history, whether a nation's history or personal history, is the path to repeat history, including the mistakes. I know it can be painful because it hurts when we fell short, when we weren't perfect, when we failed to live up to expectations. It is painful to see and review and to analyze where we've fallen short. I understand that. But in order to improve, we must take a critical look at ourselves and our behavior. If we're going to improve as a nation, we must look at our behaviors and improve. So I ask you, what is critical race theory? And what does all that I've just talked about have to do with critical race theory? It has everything to do with critical race theory. So I ask, at any point in American history, has any law, anywhere, at any time, been written with race in mind? That's a simple question. At any point in American history, was any law written with race in mind? Of course it has. If you don't believe any law was written with race in mind, you are not being intellectually honest. You're not. To form a more perfect union, we must demand, we must require intellectual honesty. CRT, critical race theory, is a study of where race and law intersect. That's it. That's all it is. The theory supports to analyze where race and law intersect. That's it. That's it. But there's a lot of people that don't want us to analyze that. They don't want us to critique it. They don't want us to look at it. But if you don't think it's important or it doesn't matter in current times, it does. History is just not a past. It also is our future. The Great Sioux Nation and the Black Hills is a contemporary issue that proves the need for critical race theory. And you say, but Harry, the Sioux Nation, the Black Hills, that was solved a long time ago. No, it wasn't. It is still an open issue requiring analysis. Let us not forget the Southern economy is another glaring example of the need for CRT. The current issue, the current assault, the current brazen attitude of some who are attempting to limit voting rights and that surge of voter suppression is another glaring example for the need for CRT. Some have called it Jim Crow 2 or racism on steroids. Should we not review the literature of such subjects? Critical race theory examines where race and law intersect on any of just the three issues I just mentioned. Do you think race had any part to play in it? Shouldn't we look at it? It is a theory that seeks to critically examine the law as it intersects with the issues of race. Some states are passing laws against teaching critical race theory. Imagine that. States are passing laws that forbid any teacher, including in a university, to teach critical race theory. The Texas law, which I read in its entirety, says a teacher cannot teach any issue, any subject that makes people feel, the student particularly, feel uncomfortable. A university cannot demand, a high school cannot demand that a teacher tell the student the truth when it comes to critical race theory. So are they saying education is not to educate, but to make a student feel comfortable? Think of the consequences of that. Are they saying that college students can't be taught about the Trail of Tears because it may reveal an uncomfortable truth? Should we not know about the Trail of Tears? Or college students should not learn about how Africans were kidnapped and their bodies stacked in horizontal cages on slave ships so they could spend their lives and the lives of their children's and grandchildren's as slaves to make other people rich and their children rich and their grandchildren rich and their great-grandchildren rich? Are we to avoid that subject because it makes people feel uncomfortable? Now, how does that apply to you and your authentic identity? It's easy. The only way you're going to improve your life is to review those subjects in your life, those issues in your life, those times in your life where you weren't really comfortable. Because it is those times that provides the most growth. Some people may be offended to learn that their inherited wealth was acquired by the means of slavery, or through the Trail of Tears, or from the Tulsa race riots, or the students at the University of Texas. It may be harmful to them to learn that Texas was actually a Mexican state that revolted. Texas was a slave-owning state, mainly populated by white slave owners, until Mexico, the Mexican government, abolished their individual governance, and they took over, thus disallowing any slaves in that state. Should we not teach students this? We can't teach them because it may make them feel uncomfortable. It may make students in the great state of Texas uncomfortable to know that there were once a Mexican state that revolted. Texas and many other states are making it illegal to teach inconvenient truths. Can you not see the harm in that? Critical race theory originated in the 1970s with the writings of numerous legal scholars. It was just not one person, it was numerous legal and political scholars. It didn't emerge as a movement until around the 1980s when people said we need to teach people, students, the public in general, where we have made mistakes in the past and where we can learn from them. That's simple. It is rooted in critical theory, and critical theory focuses on a reflective assessment and critique of society and culture. Should we not do that? Should we not have a fair assessment in order to go forward in a more positive and productive manner? Critical theory is designed to help us understand the power within each of us and the power within our country. It's much like the authentic identity theory in that it requires us to look at us. Critical race theory is a loosely organized framework based on the premise that race is more a social construct than a biological feature. Let me provide an example. Many of you may not be aware, but many may, of the one-drop rule. The one-drop rule is a social and legal principle of racial classification that was prominent in the United States. It asserted that any person that had a black ancestor, regardless of how black, but if they had a black ancestor, they were to be considered a black. Now, in a historical context, they were considered a Negro. If you had one drop of black ancestry, you were considered a Negro. That was the law. That was the law. Should we not study that? To deny the validity of critical race theory is to deny history. So an analysis could be done on the one-drop rule to determine if race was used in these laws, and if so, which I would think would be obvious, but if so, what are the ramifications of such laws? What were the ramifications of the one-drop rule? We need to know the ramifications so we don't repeat such tragedies if they were tragic ramifications. Do you remember the white-only signs? I do. Am I supposed to ignore they existed because they may make students of today feel uncomfortable knowing that there were really white-only signs for, say, water fountains or stools to sit on? There were. I remember them as a child. It had an impact on my life. Some people theorize the legal institutions in the United States are inherently racist insofar as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites. Does that scare you? But what if it's true? Does it scare you or even bother you that some people think or theorize that legal institutions of the United States were set up to create and maintain an inequality between whites and non-whites? Does that bother you? Well, let me inform you of this. Are you aware that American minority population have to possess identification cards issued by the United States government to prove they are a minority? A certain minority in this country has to prove they are a minority by cards issued by the United States government. Were you aware of that? They have to prove their heritage. These people have an entire bureau of the United States government to handle, or better said, mishandle their assets, their inheritance from their great grandparents. They were left an inheritance, but the United States government determines how that inheritance is supposed to be handled, to be monitored, to be used. Now I ask you, how would you feel if your grandparents left you an inheritance and the government came in and said, we'll handle it for you? There is well over $2 billion missing from the account that is supposed to oversee the welfare of the minority's inheritance. Now, knowing that, does that make you feel uncomfortable? What if you learn that part of your wealth came from that missing $2 billion? Is that inconvenient for you? Shouldn't educators speak of such things? Truth can make us feel uncomfortable. Think on that. Critical race theory is dedicated to examining the law and legal institutions. Have they been used to serve the interest of the powerful and wealthy? If so, what are the ramifications? What are the consequences? There's a large number of people and one political party that does not want to examine how race has been used to serve the interest of the elite. They do not want any analysis of how one group of people have used power to exploit and control another group of people. Now, today, in current times, we have an entire religion weighing in to prevent looking at where race and law intersect. On June 15th, 2021, over 16,000 members of the Southern Baptist Convention will meet to discuss, among other things, Resolution 9. There are many issues surrounding Resolution 9, and I won't go into all of them, but I will discuss what Stephen Feinstein, pastor of Sovereign Way Church, the original author of Resolution 9, said his intent was. Now I will quote this. His intent was to denounce critical race theory and intersectionality ideology so that we could hold accountable those espousing it, especially within SBC institutions. His intent was to punish people that wanted to pursue where law intersect with race. An entire conference will discuss Resolution 9. Baptists would be forbidden to acknowledge any intersection of law and race. An SBC pastor from Oklahoma, who, by the way, whose governor recently signed a law into legislation that forbids schools from teaching concepts of critical race theory. A state, and Oklahoma is a Native American word from the Choctaw language meaning land of the red man. Oklahoma forbids in their schools to teach where the law was used in any racial manner against the Indians. Doesn't that bother you? The pastor from Oklahoma says that critical race theory does not align with the denominational faith statement. Wade Burleson, a pastor of Enid, Oklahoma church, argued CRT is rooted in Marxism. It is not. It is not. He says that Christ is a unifier, unifies. He said, I don't see CRT uniting. I see it dividing. So now we're learning, according to the Southern Baptist Convention, that truth is a divider. As a young man, I remember when people were against teaching the Darwinian theory of evolution. In many states, it was against the law to teach of the theory of evolution. Now, evolution is accepted. The Darwinian theory of evolution never said man came from apes. Charles Darwin was merely pointing out that we evolve as a species based upon the environment around us in order for us to survive. But religion was used against the Darwinian theory of evolution. And today we find that the SBC is using their power to forbid anybody of learning where race and law intersect. Critical race theory is merely a theory that asks questions. Has racism been used as a tool to enrich a certain segment of society? That's the question. That's only a question. And if it hasn't, shouldn't we know that? Shouldn't we know if that didn't happen? Or if it did, should we know? Now, I don't have any expectations on what you should believe or, what you should support. None. That is your choice. But you are either for an examination of the truth and facts, or you are not. But critical race theory, like many other theories, only examines evidence. That is all. It's a theory that we should look at. All I ask you now, if you are for it, know why. If you're against it, know why. But stop listening to the hate of those against it. Critical race theory is something you should either know about or you shouldn't. But you should know why. Send your comments and questions to BestYouGuru@yahoo.com. Namaste.
To pretend that we're not the machine. It's not just problems here. I've got solutions too. Let's say we turn off the TVs. Seeing that cures obesity, then we work with what we got. Put it in the pot and then the teachers get a raise. Cause it's time that they got paid and we legalize the shit. Tax the fuck right out of it. Helps hungry people eat. That's alright with me, dude.